Namaste, everyone, and welcome to our special lecture series under the title India, Our Mother. And today we have a very interesting topic and an equally interesting speaker with us. So our topic that we are exploring today is virtues as empowerment. Understanding Shakuntala in the Mahabharata. So Mahabharata, as many of us are aware, Sri Aurobindo has spoken and written a lot about Mahabharata. He said Mahabharata is the creation and expression of the mind of a nation. It is the poem of itself written by a whole people. And he goes on to say it's not only the story of the Bharatas, the clan of Bharatas, but rather on a vast scale, the epic of the soul and religious and ethical mind of a people, of a culture's social, political ideals, and of the culture and life of whole of India. So what about the women of Mahabharata? Philosopher Chaturvedi Badrinath had once said in his book, The 12 Women of Mahabharata, that each one of the women characters in Mahabharata in her own way is a teacher to mankind as to what truth and goodness in their many dimensions are. You know, it's very interesting that we are having this discussion today about Shakuntala of the Mahabharata in the context of virtues and empowerment, as we are just in a couple of days getting ready to release our issue of Renaissance with the theme of goodness. So it's really interesting how the parallel happened. And of course, we know there is Kalidasa's Shakuntala, but today we are going to focus more on the Shakuntala as Rishi Vedvyas talked about in Mahabharata. And to do that, we have with us a wonderful speaker and wonderful researcher from Delhi University, Dr. Geetesh Nirban. Welcome, Geetesh, to our Sri Aurobindo Society's special lecture series. Just to briefly introduce Geetesh, she's an associate professor of philosophy at Kamala Nehru College in Delhi University. And as a philosopher, is keenly interested in topics such as ethics, mindfulness, as well as religious studies. But one of her main interests is in studies in Mahabharata, with special research interests focusing on values, nature, women, and ecofeminism. She has a PhD from JNU, and she was also, in fact, awarded the UGC Raman Postdoc Fellowship for Mahabharata studies in the USA. At present, she's also the co-principal investigator of the project on yoga consciousness in Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, with the focus on ethical ideal for political and social well-being. And this is a project of the Ministry of Education as well as IIT Kharagpur. Dr. Geetesh Nirban is drawn by Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga and philosophy and has been to Pondicherry, Sri Aurobindo Ashram, as well as Sri Aurobindo societies several times. In fact, I had the opportunity to study with her. I mean, we were like fellow students, fellow attendees at a workshop on Upanishad several years ago. And she's currently learning French and Sanskrit as well. So welcome, Geetesh. And we look forward to hearing from you about Shakuntala of Mahabharata. So we are also, live streaming on Facebook and recording. So floor is all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Beluji. Namaskar to everyone. It is a great effort on part of Aurobharati and Auroyagna to organize the series of lectures on the theme India, Our Mother, while celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo. I want to say that I have deep reverence for intensive contribution of Sri Aurobindo for Indian philosophy and spiritualism. The work inspires and guides many associated with the world of philosophy and religion. It's in fact a kind of a guiding star for all of us who do a bit of philosophy in our own little ways in the little corners of the world. Today, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Beluji, our old friend. We were studying Sanskrit together and doing Upanishads together while being at or a society. She's invited me on this platform to share my thoughts, and I promise her to do a little bit of justice in my own little ways to the very character, to the one of the most fascinating characters that I find in Mahabharata. So with the blessings of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, I begin with the talk. Namaskar. So the theme, as Beluji just mentioned, is virtues as empowerment while understanding Shakuntala in Mahabharata. Now, before I go ahead, I would just like to share that Shakuntala has been discussed in Mahabharata, and further Shakuntala was recreated in Kalidasa's Abhigyan Shakuntalam. But for today's address, I would like to confine myself only to Shakuntala in Mahabharata. So before I touch upon Shakuntala, I would like to create a kind of a little background, navigating through virtues, Mahabharata, women in the epic, and then arrive at the thoughts on the first woman protagonist of epic, Shakuntala, who can rightfully be called the virtue queen. Now, as we all know, virtues, they are a form of common language for understanding human character and its resulting behavior that unites humanity and creates an environment of human flourishing in the society. Virtues are cultivated, and with the habit of being virtuous, we learn to control our own lives while redirecting its course towards greater happiness and fulfillment of self and society, and thus, in turn, the whole universe. So, the most important aspect about virtue is that virtue's value lies in it being practiced, and practiced consistently. So while we grapple with the issues of despair on account of looming uncertainties of the present times, be it political, economic, social, psychological, viral in form of COVID-19 and many others, it becomes essential to do some reflection on virtues through the lens of our own Indian tradition. Herein, within the Indian context, revisiting the epic Mahabharata is not only an interesting engagement, but is a mode of enhancing our own understanding of our own past for the betterment of our own present. Now, the question that comes up is, what is Mahabharata and why is Mahabharata important? In fact, I would like to focus more on why Mahabharata is important. What is Mahabharata really needs no definition. I think anyone born in India knows something or the other about Mahabharata through various modes and means. So if you look at Mahabharata, it is a story of continuity and humanity. It portrays a tripartite confluence of knowledge, language, and action with the interplay of conflicting situations in the framework of dharma. Dharma, which is the pivotal virtue on which the whole epic revolves. The Mahabharata actually addresses the issues of human conditions, conflicting ideas, behavioral inconsistencies which result in the political, social, environmental, and psychological chaos in the epic. The epic also explores how some characters falter, some make amends, whereas others resolve moral dilemmas. Every conceivable human emotion finds place in the epic. The multiple colors of the ideas, the wide range of experiences and episodes with diverse personalities spread throughout the length and the breadth of the epic just adds to the vastness of this oceanic Mahabharata, which rightfully claims by its own self that whatever is here is found everywhere, but what is not here is nowhere. So we have seen people extolling Mahabharata so much. But the real beauty of Mahabharata lies in the very fact that it talks about human beings faltering, human beings learning, and human beings improving and evolving. Where can there be a text which talks about negatives in such a positive manner? Through the episodic weaving with the thread of dharma, the Mahabharata as a text is a story of a war in the beginning, but it gradually maneuvers its way through the longest section, which is the Shanti Parva, the book on peace, and further on moves on to other parvas. The Mahabharata initiates the reader towards the process of reflection through the long drawn battle on most important element of epic, that is peace. And peace without losing the focus on dharma, that is righteousness, which is the highest virtue, which is the key element for the overall well-being in the society. People basically call Mahabharata a book of war, but it's important for all of us to really understand the intent of the writer. The writer was focusing on peace, and that is why Peace Parvan is the longest Parvan in Mahabharata. Through the mindful reading, hearing, and understanding of the Mahabharata, one can attempt to explore the meaning of the life. And the meaning of the life is right there for each one of us. It is only that we have to make an effort to locate it. The very pursuit of Mahabharata is commendable as it is quoted. When this great, incomparable tale, esteemed by dispassionate men of wide erudition, is studied in detail, their spreading insight into the three pursuits will conquer the earth. Such vast is the understanding of Mahabharata, and so vast is Mahabharata in itself. It actually enlivens us to our own culture, to our own tradition. It enlightens us as well as it makes us do a kind of self-reflection to evolve as a human being on all levels. In the compilation titled The Mahabharata Essays and Translation, Sri Aurobindo himself praises Veda Vyasa, the author of Mahabharata, while saying that he's not only someone who has high political and religious thought and deepening ethical judgments. Veda Vyasa is not only dealing with the massive aspects and worldwide issues of human conduct, but he has a keen eye for the details of governance and society, the ceremonies, forms, and usages, the religious and social order, on due stability of which the public welfare is grounded. So here is a text which talks of public welfare, and we really need to deconstruct in our own little ways the very idea that it is just a book on war. Yes, it talks of war, but it talks about war because we are always in a state of internal war. We are in the state of conflicts. Who can go or run away from the conflicts? So if it talks about war right in the beginning, I think it's doing a great justice to make us understand that how do we face the conflicting situations in life and then gradually make way for peace. So within the epic is inherent the aesthetic portrayal of importance of life, importance of living, strong and noble thinking. There is ethical representation and presentation of high social and political ideals, which are the reflection of the great Indian culture. So one can conveniently pronounce that Mahabharata is a living text. It's a living tradition which is open to interpretation and learning by all generations. It's a text which has the quaint essence of everything that is Indian. Whoever, any one of us, whoever takes a dive into it with whatever be the intent, returns not empty handed. The wise become wiser, the good becomes better or best. The Mahabharata provides substantial value to virtues for life and living. Virtues are associated with morals, with righteousness, and in context of Mahabharata, they get subsumed under one word, and that is dharma, the moral yardstick maneuvering all the episodes within the framework of epic Mahabharata. Let us now move towards knowing the women in the epic. I'm very fascinated by most of the women characters of the epic, and sometimes my heart and my mind actually feels like saying that Mahabharata is a book of women. Because starting from the first Parvan till the end, there are stories of women after women. They start an episode, they continue with the episode, and they conclude the episode. So herein, I would like to say that in light of the recent scenario of the global pandemic, Mariah Carey, the American singer-songwriter, said, when you feel like hope is gone, look inside you and be strong. And you'll finally see the truth. The hero lies within you. So this very line of Maria, really touched my heart, because this is what the women in Mahabharata actually say, that the hero is within us. And herein, I would say that the women of Mahabharata are actually the sheroes who are within themselves the heroes as portrayed by the epic. So if we visualize hero as a non-gendered symbol, it actualizes in the lives of women of the epic. The feminine protagonist of the Mahabharata, who during the hours of crisis attempt to engage in reflection and moral interrogation wherever and however the morality is being questioned. They talk about righteousness, that is the dharma experiences. So here, and I would like to say that the dharma experiences the seismic effect due to the human dispositions and propositions, which challenges the very functioning of it. We see it in almost every episode. We see a dharmic challenge coming in. It's the women of the epic who make use of their cultivated virtues to initiate a change for self-empowerment. They are, as I said just a minute back, sheroes of the Mahabharata, quite equivalent to hero. So it's hero, it's not a story of heroes versus sheroes. I think there is quite a long dialogue of sheroes that goes on throughout the length and the breadth of the epic, and heroes come in to play little roles. Well, the great eminent Mahabharata scholar whom I admire so much, Professor Kevin McGrath, he quotes Daniel Ingalls, if my pronunciation is correct about the name, to explain how the heart of Mahabharata, as we have it in the critical text, is undoubtedly the teaching of the right action. And as Professor McGrath puts it more strongly, that women in the epic Mahabharata, more than the male heroes, speak what is considered to be the social truth, what is right for Kshatriyas, and what constitutes the human behavior. They are the Satyavadinis. They are the speakers of the truth. They are the Dharma Acharanis, one whose conduct is dharmic. So powerful are these women. So powerful are these women who are inspiration for the women of today. So the story of Mahabharata unfolds not only through the lives and the achievements of men, but through the words, wisdom, and action of women. We have in our tradition a text that glorifies women. I do not know why most of the readers of the Mahabharata get confined to the disrobing of Draupadi, and in turn tend to neglect on so many other episodes that spin all through the web of Mahabharata. Well, Mahabharata reflects women as a flow of life, perceiving the truth and pointing it towards greater reality. Given the nature of language, what that greater reality is can never be stated in words without inviting the charge of incompleteness. A closer scrutiny of the text reveals that this suggestion comes from the women of the epic through their moral interrogations related to truth, morality, and dharma. While, while analyzing the question of truth as a virtue in light of the women characters of the epic, as Beluji also quoted him, the philosopher and the writer Sri Badrinath Chaturvedi states that the truth can never be completed through vach, not just through words, not just through speech. It is to be completed in the living of truth. It's a very important statement in line of the epic also, wherein the women characters make an effort to live the truth. It's not about just speaking the truth. And what do we see in the epic? We see women all over holding on to the virtue of truth and arguing for the maintenance of justice, peace, well being, while living the truth. So, the whole concept of living the truth is in itself a virtue that is a source of empowerment. The women of the epic face all possible turmoil, but never attempt suicide. And that comes as a very important message for all of us while we have faced the high rise in the suicides, the number of suicides in the country. So we have to look at these women. Where did they have a very comfortable life? Where did they not face problems? Every woman in the epic grapples with problem after problem, but never gives up, never attempts suicide. Draupadi never committed suicide. Shakuntala never committed suicide. So there are many more women, probably another occasion one can talk more about it, but these women, they derive strength and empowerment through the virtue of dharma, the moral yardstick in Mahabharata. Each woman character of the epic has something morally relevant to convey to the women of the modern day world. So it's in the light of the women of the epic that I would now tour through the life of Shakuntala and her passion for truth as a virtue to understand her value in the epic. How significant is she in the epic? But very few of us give the kind of weightage as she deserves. The character of Shakuntala appears at a very early stage in Mahabharata. I mean, right at the beginning. It's when Janmajaya, the descendant of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, inquires about the history and the fates of the ancestors that Vaishampayana narrates how Dushyanta met Shakuntala and their son came to be known as Bharata, on whom the country's name was kept. This sub-narrative occurs in the Adi Parva under the section of Sambhava Parva of Mahabharata. It is a sub-narrative with elements of love, denial, acceptance, virtue, and victory. The episode of Shakuntala is the first comprehensive narrative of a woman in Mahabharata, and that is why it is historically very significant. The first woman in the epic is Shakuntala, who's a significant character to understand because she's not a submissive feminine symbol, but a mentally strong, bold, resilient, justice-seeking woman with a deep sense of knowledge and asceticism. She's a flag bearer of the virtues of truth and righteousness, which makes her emerge as the empowered woman of epic who wins through the oddest situations of life on the basis of her ethical values, her strict adherence to dharma, characteristic style of the power of her speech, and the moral interrogation that she involves herself in order to establish social justice, in order to establish social ethics. So Shakuntala, as we look at her, is the ancestral great-grandmother of the Bharata race, whose descendants become the subjects of the Mahabharata. She emerges as a panorama of love, sincerity, care, courage, spiritual transcendence, and verbal competence as guided by dharma. She could be rightfully called the ideal for all the women of the epic. before one develops veneration and admiration for Satyavati, Gandhari, Kunti, Draupadi, and so many other women in the epic, it becomes a prerequisite to understand Shakuntala, the very woman who fought a battle all by herself and paved way for her victory through her intelligent presence of mind, a mind that was full of virtues and knowledge of dharma. The episode of Shakuntala in the Mahabharata is not simply an austere reflection of the history of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, but it's a reflection of the power of truth. Power of truth as a virtue, and how the sincere practice of it could save Shakuntala's life from the greatest of all miseries. Echoing the same tone, the very writer Beluji mentioned, and I just referred to Sri Badrinath Chaturvedi, says that Shakuntala's story is not of one's genealogy alone. Not primarily so. At the heart of it is the question of truth, the very question that we all grapple with day in and day out. And it is this very truth that she masters, and it becomes a virtue in her. That is why she can be so rightfully called the virtue queen, the queen of truth. The episode of Shakuntala in the Mahabharata, I'm sorry. So how the narrative of Shakuntala proceeds in the epic, I'm going to share in short. Shakuntala was a biological daughter of Apsara Menaka and sage Vishwamitra, but she was raised by Rishi Kanava in the midst of the natural forest under the love and care of a fostered father. So she was abandoned. So there was a kind of a trauma that she grew up with. King Dushyant of Hastinapur, during his hunting retreat, came across this beautiful hermitage wherein he encountered Shakuntala. It's through the Gandharva form of marriage that an association between the two was established. A son was born to Shakuntala out of this wedlock. Dushyanta left for Hastinapur after a quick relationship with Shakuntala, assuring of welcoming her to the kingdom in a grand way. But no one turned up, even after when the son was 6 years old. Although she lived with Rishi Kanava in the hermitage, and her son was exceptionally brave and courageous. He could tame the wildest of the animals and was named as Sarvadamana. Since no one arrived from Dushyant's side asking about her well-being of Shakuntala and her son, so Rishi Kanava decided to send Shakuntala and her son to the king. It's on reaching the kingdom, Shakuntala realized that Dushyant had forgotten about her association with Shakuntala, and he refused to accept her and the son. Though enraged, but maintaining her calm, Shakuntala presented a long speech with logical and ethical arguments before the court of the king. Since he denied her even the identity, even the existence, she decided to leave and said that even if the king was not accepting his son, then her son, the very son, would be the ruler of the whole earth in all the directions, and she would take up the responsibility of rearing him further. As she turned to leave, as she was about to leave, an invisible heavenly announcement was made justifying that whatever Shakuntala had spoken was all true. Listening to this, the court and the king accepted the mother and the son. King Dushyanta lived along with his wife and son happily. Their son later became the most powerful king of those whose descendants were Kauravas and the Pandavas. This narrative portrays actually the struggle of a single woman against her circumstances, and how, being governed by dharma, being guided by truth, the virtues inherent within her, she derived her strength, and the strength in the form of self-empowerment. Now, the question that emerges is how Shakuntala can be called the savior of truth and an ethical protagonist. Shakuntala, I would like to say, being raised in the company of sages, was very well versed with the knowledge of dharma, purushartha, the fourfold human goals, with emphasis on dharma, artha, and karma. Endowed with intellectual charm, she was a woman of exquisite beauty, hard asceticism, and sweet humility. Though she underwent immense suffering on being first abandoned by her parents and then further not being accepted by her own husband so easily, she still did not fall into hopelessness and tears, but faced the untoward circumstances with a courageous intellectual strength. And that's what is the message that comes out from the whole story of Shakuntala. When Dushyanta arrived at the hermitage, fell for her and asked her to marry him, then she did not accept his proposal blindfolded and conveyed to him that he should seek the permission of Rishi Kanva. Well, he gave a kind of a logical and an ethical argument, and she accepted the Gandharva form of marriage on ethical justification. It is here that Shakuntala's desire tendency, karma, was much well regulated by dharma. It comes forth through this episode. Even if overpowered by her desire, her mind remained focused on righteousness and the future. Through the display of feminine intelligence, she accepted Dushyanta's proposal, but with a condition, and that was a promise that their son would be King Dushyanta's successor. Now, it's intriguing observation in Mahabharata that women were politically very conscious. They knew that for being at the center of the power play, they had to play a very significant role. They could not contribute in the material well-being of the nation. That is, they could not go out and earn. That is, contribute in the artha element of purushartha directly. So they really made all the efforts to install their progeny on the throne. They contributed so that these very sons could contribute towards a better future for the state by providing these women providing well-groomed and well-educated king who could ensure that the artha or the economic element of the state could be well taken care of as well as protected. So these women had great strength in them. They contributed towards the artha element, but quite indirectly. It appears that Satyavati, who emerged later in the Mahabharata, must have had an enormous influence of Shakuntala on her personality, because even Satyavati had a very conditional marriage. Shakuntala, as the grand ancestral queen of epic, may have been the guiding light to many queens of the epic. Through her actions, which were based upon her virtues of confidence, intelligence, and moral awareness, it can be said that Shakuntala takes the credit for spearheading the culture of conditional marriage, which was later actually followed by Satyavati and others. So these are the women who are really making a mark for themselves through their own way outs. They are not giving up, they are not losing out, and they are not hopeless beings. I shall now be touching upon asceticism, self-control, moral questioning as virtues in Shakuntala. When Shakuntala was not recognized by Dushyanta on her arrival with a son, when the king did not accept both of them and instead called her by names, suspecting her integrity by calling her a woman of low status in the garb of sannyasin, Shakuntala did not lose heart. She did not plead in for helplessness. I mean to say, she was not helpless. She did not become a bundle of tears, did not get distressed and slip into deep psychological problem called depression. She acquired, it's not that she was unaffected by pain. Suffering had made her confident, resilient, and strongly worded with firm determination to ascertain the truth through her strength and dignity. She acquired the state of Sitrankyo, a very unattached attitude with focus only on action and duty consciousness, as well as the well-being of her son. Her whole saga is about questioning the truth, as well as making use of words for the establishment of truth, the lost identity and concept in Dushyant's court. Truth was completely lost in Dushyant's court, and it is Shakuntala who brought in the whole element back. On witnessing the irresponsible and rude attitude of Dushyanta, she never desired that he accepted her as wife, but she asked from him to not backslide from the promise made prior to the marriage. Shakuntala said, "O king, this is your son. Let him be installed as your heir apparent. O king, this godlike boy was begotten by you and me. O best of men, fulfill now the promise you made of me." We have to notice Shakuntala is not pleading about herself. She's asking for the rights of a son. "O illustrious man, call to your mind the agreement you made with me on the occasion of our marriage at the hermitage of the Carnival." The self-energizing through her inner feminine strength, Shakuntala actually faces the tumultuous moment with determination and boldness to seek justice for the sake of her son. She desired to wake up the king from his slumber and accept his responsibility as a father, if not as a husband, and not to shun away from the responsibility of further taking care of the child. Shakuntala was endowed with the power of speech, the vak, with sense of righteousness, dharma guiding her all words and actions. She faced Dushyanta, who had forgotten the promise made to her. She could not allow her son to be denied of what his father has promised for him prior to the marriage. For her, protection of child's rights was focus point, and she knew the pain of being forsaken by the biological parents, and she never wanted that the history should repeat for her son or her son to undergo the trauma that she had experienced. A heart of a mother, a heart of a strong mother, that I suffered, but I'm not going to let you suffer. Abandonment of children by parents has tremendous psychological repercussions, and we can very well imagine how Shakuntala may have suffered and became strong. But yes, she had a fostered father. Under no conditions Shakuntala begged for her rights. She wasn't a beggar. She maintained her dignity of a queen without being accepted as a queen. She exemplified that positions matter, but more important is the ethics, more important is the attitude. The practice of virtues and the protection of truth, that is what is the fundamental feature of a kind of an ornament of a queen, and she carried it with so much of grace. She demanded for her rights justly and rightfully without letting her mental demeanor getting ruffled on account of humiliation of being rejected by Dushyanta. She stood by the truth and was left with no honor in her heart for Dushyant, who consistently was denying the sanctity of truth. She worshipped truth. She lived by truth. She breathed by truth. And she fought for truth on the basis of truth. And then she goes on to tell her husband, collecting her thoughts in a moment, she thus addressed her husband, looking straight at him in grief as well as in anger. "O great king, knowing everything, how can you, like a mean and inferior man, say that you know nothing? Your heart is witness to the truth or the falsehood of my words. Therefore speak the truth and do not degrade yourself. He who has one thing in mind but represents another thing to others is a thief and a robber of his own self. What sin is he not capable of committing? Here is a woman who's an ordinary woman in the court of the king and is trying to question the king. And that is what is the moral interrogation. A real ethical questioning that the women in Mahābhārata consistently do. And that is all based upon the concept of truth. And that is why truth becomes a kind of a virtue for strong empowerment of these women. Shakuntala understood the moral basis of all social customs. Making use of wise speech, she warned the king that he would fail to achieve anything if he degraded his own life and disowned his son. She reiterated the importance of truth and justified that truth as a virtue was above all human virtues. Shakuntala stood by truth, fought for truth. She made efforts to complete the truth by living the truth. She knew that by insulting his own wife, the king was committing a grave offense, because the wife was not a mere companion, but a basis of three aims in life for the king, and that is dharma, artha, and kama, while ultimately helping a man realize a sense of fulfillment. She was not only a source of progeny, but the real cause of man's prosperity. Shakuntala's valiant and truthful presentation, rooted in the knowledge of dharma and karma of a wife, is worth an admiration. Here was a woman in the midst of the strong, power-packed assembly of men who stood assertively in the court proclaiming what the king was losing. Shakuntala knew the importance of Shreya, the desirable, over the prayer pleasurable, and demanded that the king rose above his egoistic tendencies and gave serious hearing to her words to discern his dharma as a husband and as a father. Shakuntala's actions and words give her an image of female protagonist, because she made a man learn about the significance of social morality as dharma through her verbal competence and ethical conscientiousness. She said, "The learned men of the old say that the husband himself entering into the womb of his wife comes out as a son. Therefore, the wife is called Jaya. No man, even in anger, should even do anything that is disagreeable to his wife. For happiness, joy, virtue, and everything depends on the wife. Wife is a sacred soil in which the husband is born again. Even the rishis cannot create men without women." So Shakuntala was raised in a very humble setup with no royal patronage, but her words displayed her mastery over all virtues, that is, ethical insight and awareness essential for human welfare. Since the king was not ready to even accept this son, so she once again adopted the path of moral vocabulary to prove the significance of son in life, and made him realize that disowning one's own relation was not the sign of any greatness. It was sheer irony that Shakuntala was forcing the art of morality over the king, who was expected to be the master of it. Unfortunately, Dushyanta lacked it, which according to her was supposed to be the crowning glory of the person adorning the highest seat of power in the state. Shakuntala tells him, what a greater happiness to a father. What is a greater happiness to a father than what a father feels when his son, running to him, clasps him with his tiny little arms, through his body is full of dust and dirt. As the Brahmana is the best among bipeds men, as cow is the best among quadrupeds, as preceptor is the best among all superiors, so is the son among all objects pleasing to the touch. To this boy has sprung from your body. He's a second being begotten from you. Behold your own self in your own son as you see your image in the clear waters of the lake. This is what she told to Dushyanta. To her, truth did not require witness. She lived through the greatness of truth, through her thoughts, words, and actions. Shakuntala was the foremost of all women in the epic who adhered to dharma, spoke and defended it. For her, truth was highest of all virtues, best of the human values. She said, if 1,000 horse sacrifices and truth were weighed, truth would found heavier than 1,000 horse sacrifices. It's a statement by her within the realm of the epic, where she says truth is far heavier than the weight of the sacrifice of 1,000 horses. So important it is. Oh king, I tell you, truth is equal to the study of the entire Vedas and the ablutions and all the sacred pilgrimages. There's no virtue equal to truth. There is nothing superior to truth, and there is nothing more sinful than falsehood. This is what she tells Dushyanta. The incessant stream of lies at the end of Dushyanta was beyond her comprehension, and the feminine self-respect encouraged her to maintain the poise and dignity. On account of her astounding moral strength, she boldly pronounced that she was not interested in being with a man who had no sense of righteousness, who had no capacity to embrace the truth. Thereon, she decided to leave, but could not allow and accept the denial to her son's legible rights. She was ready to leave, but she said, I can't leave my son like that. She had raised her son for the first 6 years in the best possible manner, and now she demanded that the father take up the paternal responsibility. Since Dushyanta disbelieved in her words and she couldn't take upon insults, so she wanted to quit without asking for even a bit, and declared that she was confident of raising her son by herself. As a ruler of the earth, this bold assertion of infinite confidence, brilliant duty consciousness left everyone in the court speechless. As a long, passionate, and assertive speech she made before the king, as accompanied with rationality and morality, which is very much adored within the realm of women's studies. This is Shakuntala, the powerful Shakuntala, the fearless Shakuntala, the Shakuntala who lives by the virtue of truth, and that's the way she is known as an empowered woman. As a chief exponent of truth as a virtue, Shakuntala was infuriated on the account of lies, and she did not hesitate to threaten him by proclaiming that his head would split into 100-fold if he did not trust her words. "Oh, Dushyanta," she said, "if you refuse what I ask you to do, your head will today be divided into 1,000 pieces." I think she's angry now. So in the words of Kevin McGrath, Professor McGrath, he says she accuses him like a vulgar. Prakratas tatha, and discourses upon the importance and validity of truthful speech and condemning mendicity. She did not hesitate to speak about her own husband's death and announcing that a son would be the ruler of the earth after him. She was so sticking to truth. As a bold woman protagonist, Shakuntala, she feared none because she was protected by the power of truth. Nowhere in the narrative Shakuntala is meek or weak. She's a firebrand feminine character who derives empowerment through virtues. The celestial voice crediting Shakuntala for her truth, admonishing the king, and here he goes down to express his regret. It's only on the celestial hearing that he accepts that, oh, he was wrong. Shakuntala's moral questioning of the king immortalized her truthful conviction, moral confidence, and unceasing courage. She exemplified and glorified the concept of swadharma, giving more importance to social morality over individual sense of fulfillment. And that's what is the role of Shakuntala in the Mahabharata, wherein she goes to the court to remind the king of his social morality, his social duty, his social ethical conscientiousness. And that's where she thought was her responsibility as a woman. Shakuntala just did not go to plead. Shakuntala went there to get her rights into her kitty, not by making a very submissive submission. No, she argued. She fought for it. She did not plead. She is not a weakling. She's a strong woman. Shakuntala underwent a series of suffering to ultimately emerge victorious at the end of a verbal battle based upon a deep insight of the concepts of morality and virtues. Her close connectivity with nature gave her immense strength to maintain her calm composure in spite of being emotionally devastated after witnessing the most unimaginable and ruthless aspect of Dushyant's personality. Shakuntala pleaded not for her security, but for the unity in the family, which displayed her constructive approach towards life and relationships. Her words to Dushyanta in the court did not project a young girl's expression. In the court, she spoke as a mature, educated, well-read, well-spoken lady with careful reflection on the responsibility as a wife and as a mother. She remained unattended and unaided till the final divine intervention, but all through she maintained a dignified fury. Yes, she was angry, but not losing out. Intelligent forthrightnesses and calm composure. All three were her virtues, and all three virtues were also coming through the power of truth. The sparkling feature of the entire narrative of Shakuntala is an account of the brilliant words of wisdom and fearlessness of the forest woman, to whom goes the credit of craving the path, or for carving the path of her victory all by herself, without clinging on to anyone for the support. She was a living being, living the truth, and thus bringing the completeness to truth. And that's the way we started. That's the way I started in the beginning. That it's the truth, the value of truth does not lie in the speech. The value of truth lies in living the truth. Truth does not stand only in words, but truth stands in consonance between words and actions. Just speaking the truth will not sort our matters, as Shakuntala conveys. It's about living truthfully, fighting for the truth that we can make truth complete. The divine intervention at the end to prove her purity justified that even the gods couldn't miss giving her standing ovation for her truthful verbal competence. What makes one remember Shakuntala even in the 21st century is a skillful use of language and patient forbearance as weapons to deal with her predicament. I'm coming to the last part. Shakuntala of Mahabharata could be aptly called as a beauty with unparalleled mind and strength, one who was a protector of truth and who emerged as a die-hard proponent of social ethics. The sub-narrative of Shakuntala in Mahabharata is the first detailed exposition of women in the epic, which establishes the role of feminine in the social context of that era. This was followed by many episodes on women, but this particular one emerged with great social message for the women of all periods through its forceful renderings as, number one, Mahabharata tradition does not promote silent suffering, which is a sign of weak-hearted. Mahabharata promotes opposition. Mahabharata tradition emphasizes on the spirit of questioning and not accepting on hearsay. The whole process of interrogation is legal, is dharmic within the realm of epic. Mahabharata tradition glorifies raising the voice against the wrong for protecting the truth as one's moral responsibility as dharma. Mahabharata's tradition gives women the liberty to realize their identity and establish it strongly. Yes, there are errors that happen. But look at the text, it gives them the opportunity to speak against it. It's very easy to just denigrate a text by saying it's only demeaning women. Some are demeaned, some women are demeaned, some men are also demeaned there. Insults are on both fronts. All genders are troubled there. But Mahabharata gives a scope for all genders to evolve, to rectify. It gives us an opportunity to reflect on our errors and make an effort to change these errors and move towards the path of positivity as well as well-being. So Shakuntala's character from Mahabharata becomes a point of study for Kalidasa later. And he redesigned it in a way to give a poetic nuance to it. But somehow, our Shakuntala of Mahabharata definitely got a bit lost there. Whereas my focus here has been to emphasize on the point that Shakuntala of Mahabharata is an example of women of today's India. She breaks through all power structures to establish and promote truth as a virtue, as well as strives to establish equality. And that's what women of 21st century are doing. We're breaking through all the power structures. We're not pleading. We are fighting. We're fighting against the wrong. There is this epic which was giving us this lesson so many years back. The Mahabharata Shakuntala remains to be an inspiration for the women because she was the foremost in the epic to have raised the issue of women's rights, a right of a woman, a right of a child. So Shakuntala stands as an epitome, as a figure, as a symbol of women's rights and children's rights, as well as she's the first woman to be raising moral questions. She promoted the spirit of moral interrogation while spearheading the whole movement of cultivation of the virtue of practice of truth as a source of empowerment and advancement. And herein I conclude by saying that Shakuntala of Mahabharata is not a passive character. She's a woman who brims with feminine energies through her ascetic practices and moral courage while being in the forest, and is strong to face the heart-wrenching period of turmoil. She's self-controlled, she's bold, she's assertive, she's mature, she's intelligent, she's positive-minded individual, and she retains and maintains a loving and caring demeanor while sailing through the roughest patches of life. She doesn't become a man, she remains a woman. She doesn't give up her womanly qualities. She fights strongly. She lives like a woman. She fights like a woman. So we can't say Shakuntala was manly. No, there was nothing like that. The women of Mahabharata are feminine and they glorify their femininity and they fight in a very strong spirit when they feel something wrong is done to them. She is not a victim. She's a victor who knows how to defy victimhood and emerge victorious. She's like a bird phoenix who knows how to rise from the ashes. With an unparalleled persona, Shakuntala is one of the finest women protagonists of the ancient India and perhaps an exemplary inspiration of courage, fortitude, and questioning spirit and empowerment for the women of today. Mahabharata provides individual figures who play a role of moral exemplars or moral teachers for all of us of the Mother India. The very series with a beautiful theme that is being organized today. So Shakuntala's episode of moral interrogation and victory based on the virtue of truth can provide a framework for our own moral reasoning in our own particular situation. She is a cheerleader for all strong women. And that is what Shakuntala is, with the virtue of truth as a source of empowerment. So beautiful and so strong is Shakuntala of Mahabharata. Thank you.
Thank you, Geetesh ji. This was marvelous. You really made Shakuntala come alive right in front of our eyes. And thank you for this powerful, inspiring description of who Shakuntala is in Mahabharata and what she means for us today. So I could go on and say something more and more again, but maybe if there are any comments or quick questions from any of our participants, so please unmute yourself. Okay, and just go ahead and ask if you have any question or comment.
Yeah, I'm Bijoy Bari. Good afternoon. Dr. Geetesh, really thanks a lot for enlightening gracefully on the fast and, foremost character of Mahābhārata. And it is a great learning experience for me. I was having a feeling that in many instances, the male ego has made the virtuous woman suffer silently in the whole epic, except, Draupadi, who rightfully made her points clear and protested. But today's session has changed my perception and emphasizing on the point that revealing truth is not enough, but living and fighting for it is most important, and which Shakuntala stands for it. A big thank you to you for today's session.
Thank you, Bijoy.
Hello. Thank you so much. Today I came to know so many things. I don't know anything about Shakuntala. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comment or question or thought anybody have? We have a message from Neha ji on the chat box. Very, very inspiring. She's emphasizing your last words, a victor, not a victim. Wonderful, wonderful.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
This is Bhuvneshwari this side.
Okay, yes.
Actually, yeah, actually, through the historic reading and learning from the oldest persons from the family and all, we just learned about Mahabharata stories enough and enough. But about the Shakuntala's part, it will be coming only in the very short way there. But now, through your speech, we got very much this thing inspired about that character, and I just wanted to go and read once again about Dushyant and Shakuntala from my olden books. It's given by my grandfathers and all. So thank you for giving the opportunity to understand briefly. Thank you, Geetesh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhuvneshwari. You know what I really loved in the way you described Shakuntala and her virtues, the power of truth as virtue. And I was constantly reminded of what Mother said, that, okay, if there has to be any one binary in today's age and the future that is coming, it has to be only between truth and falsehood. No other binary matters. And it's the truth, living the truth, standing, walking in the truth. That part was emphasized so beautifully in your presentation, Geetesh ji. So I really valued that. And again, just like I said, you made Shakuntala come alive through your description. And I also liked the part about, this is something I've always been fascinated by her, how Shakuntala speaks first for her son, then for herself. This is something I've always admired in that. But I think you kind of just mentioned very briefly at the end how in Kalidasa's Shakuntala, which has somehow taken over the imagination of the collective mind in India, there is some sort of a weakling quality to it, or a long-standing suffering kind of thing. And, the whole fisherman story that comes in between, and the lost ring, and how through a ring she's found. But the original Shakuntala gets lost. So yes, as a romantic poetry, Aurobindo actually calls Kalidasa's Shakuntala as one of the most captivating and romantic poetry in the world of literature. But yes, so that is there, but the warriorhood of a woman gets lost there. So I really appreciate how you brought her to life today for us, for all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Beluji, for everything. And it was such a wonderful experience for me to share some thoughts on Shakuntala. And as you also said, you love Shakuntala, and we jointly decided that yes, we are going to make Shakuntala relive through this very important series on Mother India.
Yes.
We need Shakuntala, the real Shakuntala, back.
Yes. Thank you.
And namaskar.
Namaskar. Shweta, I think she wanted to say something.
Thank you so much, Geetesh. This was really a wonderful experience for me. And I really felt that, the Shakuntala today, was a personification of the four powers of the mother, the Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahasaraswati, and Mahasaraswati. So, Mahalakshmi. Yeah. So, all the time that you were speaking, I could really see that, all these four, it's a play of these four powers. So that single woman was coming forth. Thank you so much. It was amazing. It was wonderful. Thank you.
In fact, it gives Beluji newer insight to actually read Mother's understanding about the feminine, because it's a beautiful insight. One can do a real good research paper on Mother's understanding of feminine and the women in Mahabharata, probably
yes.
characters, especially Shakuntala.
Yes.
Thank you for that beautiful insight.
Yes, and we'll have you back, as we talked about it, in a few months, to do some bigger project with this very intersection between mother's insights into feminine, and so we'll definitely do something. Bijoy, you wanted to? Okay, he's just sharing what he shared in the chat box as well. So thank you everyone for joining. It's 12:05. We will be also sharing this on Society's YouTube channel in a few days, so it will be there as part of our archives. Thank you so much, Geetesh ji, and we'll be in touch. Have a beautiful rest of your Sunday. Thanks again for spending this time.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Thank you, Beluji. Namaskar, and thank you to everyone.
Namaste. And see you soon in Pondicherry.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to coming. See everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.